All right, episode 82. What do Tiger Woods, Sam Snead, and Mickey Wright have in common? They all won 82 professional golf tournaments. Beyond MD, episode 82. Here we go. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me again on Beyond MD. Happy New Year. It's wonderful to have you back. Today's going to be something a little different, a solo episode. It's going to be my top 11 productivity hacks for 2025 and beyond. I actually just recorded this episode and realized my mic wasn't on, so I'm going to record the whole thing again. I'm really hopeful I can be productive and get it all done on one go. So a lot of people have been asking me, why am I so into productivity? I myself have been wondering the same question. After reflecting on it, this is what I've come up with. Productivity is another tool that we have in our kit to help us get things done in a more time-efficient manner so that we can effectively create more time in our lives. After all, time is the most valuable resource and commodity that we have. And it's the same reason that I'm so interested in money and financial literacy. I believe that if we master our money, there will one day come a point that we have enough money and we no longer have to worry so much about it, such that we can use our time in any way that we please. And we can start to live life on our own terms. That's why I'm doing all of this. And I think that's the common thread between financial literacy and productivity. So in 2024, I had the pleasure of reading 4 amazing books on productivity. I will outline all of them in the episode, and I will be going through these 11 hacks, talking about things that I have done in my day-to-day to work on these practices and talk about how they've helped me. And I'll be citing evidence and tips from the 4 books that I've read. So guys, let's do it. 11 productivity hacks for 2025 and beyond. Here we go. Productivity hack number 1. Set your goals. We all need to understand what our near-term, mid-term, and long-term goals are. So near-term goals are what I describe as mini goals. So these are daily goals and even weekly goals. And I think it's really important to have some of these. These might be even mini goals within a single larger project. And why is this important? It's important because humans are goal-oriented. And if we set up sequential mini goals within a larger task, every time you accomplish one of those mini goals, it's important to give yourself a pat on the back. And by engaging in this practice, it forces us to, in fact, live more in the moment. This is something that I talked about in my arrival fallacy episode. I think it's really important to understand this concept of mini goals or near-term goals. Midterm goals may be something that are more quarterly, en route to your bigger project, or longer-term goals, which are usually going to be maybe a year out or more. So understand your goals. Take it one step further and write these goals down, because there is evidence to show that writing down our goals makes it more likely that we are going to achieve them. One paper published out of the Dominican University showed that simply writing down our goals increased likelihood of achievement of these goals by 33%. Another paper in the Journal of Applied Psychology showed that simply writing down goals increased our odds of achieving them by 42%. So if we can tip the odds in our favor, I think we should do that. So make it official, write down your goals. Now, when you're writing down your goals, you want to write them down somewhere so that you will be revisiting them on a regular basis. And this is what David Allen, productivity expert, talks about in his book, Getting Things Done. He says that you should ideally be writing your goals down somewhere and revisiting them on perhaps a weekly basis. I think it's a good idea when you revisit your goals to give yourself an objective score on a scale from 1 to 10 and rate yourself on what kind of progress are you making on your goals. And if you're not making the progress that you want to, then figure out why. Maybe write down why this may be happening. So figure out what your new goals are going to be. Maybe it's a business or a project. Maybe it's getting into shape. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's traveling. Write them down and revisit them. Okay, productivity hack number 2. Identify the next action. Why do we need to do this? Because our actions are what dictate progress. So we need to identify the next action to make our goals a reality. So let's say you are embarking on a new educational project. Your next action is probably going to be, well, what am I going to educate people on, and how am I going to deliver this content? Maybe it's going to be in the form of YouTube videos. Maybe it's going to be in the way of a podcast. Well, how are you going to do that? Maybe you should talk to somebody who's done it before. And what's the next action step in this case? it's probably writing that individual an email. If your goal is to get into better shape, so I have a personal goal of doing at minimum 6 days of exercise every week. For me, my next action steps are putting my workout clothes by my bedside, so I'll actually do my exercise in the morning, and then making sure I have room in my schedule for that workout. Reading is something that I'm really big on. So if I want to read 10 to 20 pages a day, I need to make it so that my books are available in front of me. They should be visible at my bedside table or at the bedside table in my kids' rooms, because we do try to read together before going to bed. Those are good next action steps. And if you're thinking about maybe traveling more this year, like in 2023, Seema and I decided we did not want to put off traveling until later. So 2023 was a big travel year for us. So our next action step was having a conversation as a couple. And then we had to research, where do we want to go? And at some point, you may want to research, what kind of credit cards do you need to sign up for? So the book, The One Thing by Gary Keller, Gary talks about identifying the next action step to make your goal a reality. So instead of having like 5 or 6 action steps, which can become much too confusing for most of us, what is the one thing that you need to do today to move further ahead with respect to your goals and your projects? Try to think about it like that. What is the next one action step? Okay, let's move on to productivity hack number 3. Plan and structure your day. I think that this happens the night before. Some people will have very elaborate color maps with every single activity documented day to day. For me, frankly, that takes up way too much time. I'm a little bit more old-fashioned. I have found it very useful just to put pen to paper and keep track of things in my journal, and to make sure I carry this journal with me wherever I go. So I will set out what I want to do for tomorrow and write it down in my journal. I won't necessarily write down things like eating breakfast, going for a walk, or exercising, because those are things that I expect myself to do. But what I will do is that I will create some space in my daily schedule, because the reality is, we all want to be efficient, but we're never as efficient as we think we're going to be. So I find it valuable to just introduce some wiggle room, some buffer room, so that I'm not disappointing myself. I'm not setting myself up for failure, because I want to exercise and go for those walks. So I'll fit it into that buffer room that I'm creating in my schedule. One little hack that I find really, really useful is organizing the content that I want to absorb for the next day ahead of time. When I'm exercising, I do enjoy listening to YouTube videos. So instead of scrambling the morning of to figure out what am I going to listen to while I'm exercising, I will preload YouTube videos into my watch later list. That way they're all ready to go for the next day. Part 2 of this is structuring your day. So what I found is that creative tasks that require a lot of focus and mental bandwidth, I find for me, those are best done early in the day when I can really hit it, pedal to the metal, and focus uninterrupted. I find that other things like meetings and Zoom calls are maybe done a little bit later in the day, where I don't necessarily have to exert as much energy. And then I've also found that if I have blocks of time where I know I'm going to be interrupted more, so this could be a busy shift at a hospital where I'm on call. I know the phone's going to be ringing. I know people will be walking into my office to talk about cases. If I'm in a time block like that, then I won't do things that are really difficult. Like I will not be reading a CT chest, abdomen, pelvis for cancer staging on a call shift. I will try to keep it more simple by sticking to things like CT heads, MRI knees, CT chests, just really simple things, because I can tackle those things and deal with a few interruptions at the same time. But I try to reserve the more complicated tasks for later. Trust me, it took me like 9 years of clinical practice to figure this out. Finally figured out this is how I should be doing things in my day to day. So Gary Keller, in his book, The One Thing, he talks about a really important concept. And he says that even though we don't want to believe that our willpower is finite, our willpower truly is finite. And in fact, our willpower decreases as the day goes on. So when you are trying to structure your day, I think it's important, taking this concept, to do the hardest things earlier in the day. And the things that are not as difficult and maybe require less willpower, reserve those for later on in the day. Okay, productivity hack number 4, cluster your tasks. So activities of a similar nature that can all be done in the same time block with the same setup should probably be done together. I think if we do this, as hard as it is, there are 2 benefits here. The first is more obvious. It is time saving. So I'll give a personal example. When I am producing a podcast episode, I have to do an introduction, then I edit the interview, and then I do a conclusion. It makes more sense for me to load up GarageBand once, plug in my podcast mic once, and do all of those tasks in one go, rather than doing the intro one day, coming back the next day and setting things up again for the editing, and then plugging everything up again for the conclusion. It's just not as time efficient to do it separately. The other reason why it's important to task cluster is that the hardest part is starting, but once you have started, usually keeping momentum going is much easier. So Ali Abdaal, who is a world-renowned productivity expert, he talks in his book, Feel Good Productivity, that procrastination is usually the result of three things. It can be uncertainty, fear, inertia. Maybe one of those things or all three in combination. And he says that the hardest part is indeed starting, but once you have started, it's easier to keep going. And he has a rule called the 5-minute rule. If you are having a hard time starting something difficult or you've been delaying something, make a commitment. Try doing that task for just 5 minutes. And then once 5 minutes is up, you can make a decision. You can say, okay, I'm done with this. I don't want to do it anymore. Or you can say, well, 5 minutes wasn't that bad. Maybe I can keep going. What I found in my experience is that once 5 minutes have passed, I usually keep going. So give it a shot, the 5-minute rule. Okay, let's move on to what I think is the most important productivity hack. Number 5, that is the concept of deep work. Deep work is defined by Cal Newport in his amazing book called Deep Work as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate. There is so much in that definition, which is truly jam-packed. But let's be clear, deep work is not the same as being logged in remotely and replying to emails all day. The one really important component of deep work is to be in a distraction-free setting. This is so important because distractions take our attention away from the task at hand and result in task switching, which is very, very dangerous. Task switching eats up our time because it takes time to move from task A to task B, and then it takes even more time to go back from task B and reorient yourself to task A. You may have been working on something very complex with multiple steps. If your attention is diverted and you go back to task A, you may have forgotten where you were. This happens to me all the time. When I'm interrupted reading scans, sometimes I'll forget. Oh, did I look at the lung parenchyma? Did I look at the mediastinal lymph nodes? It's so easy to forget where you were in the original task. Gary Keller, in his book, The One Thing, says that we can lose up to 28% of our workday due to inefficiencies that come with task switching. And he says that multitasking for essentially all of us is a lie. And I do believe in that. So instead of multitasking, I believe in sequential monotasking. So guys, there you have it. Deep work, I think, is the most important productivity hack. The second most important is going to be number 11, so I hope you guys will stay with me here. While we are on the topic of productivity, a quick message from a supporter of the show who helps others in healthcare be more productive. I'd like to take a minute to talk about a company that I've been following for a few years now. I initially met them on this very podcast and was taken by their story and passion to make life better for doctors. Introducing Aria Health, the groundbreaking electronic health records company that's redefining the way doctors practice medicine. Aria Health is all about putting doctors back in the driver's seat, in control of your destiny to become the doctor you've always aspired to be. Aria Health is not your typical EHR company. They're all about keeping the focus where it belongs, on you and your patients. They want to empower you to be caring, present, efficient, and powerful in your medical practice, without the burden of endless note-taking and paperwork. Join the Aria Health community of doctors who are already taking back their lives and practicing medicine the way they were meant to, free of corporate shackles, one patient at a time. But that's not all. Your time is precious and you want to get back to what truly matters. Aria's unique promise is to get you up and running as a new clinic in less than 30 days. And if you're thinking about integrations or migrations, don't worry. Aria can get you set up in less than 2 months so you can seamlessly transition without missing a beat. What sets Aria Health apart is their unwavering commitment to helping doctors thrive and making doctors the heroes of the healthcare story. They leverage the power of artificial intelligence, handling complex data ingestion and automating workflows so you can focus on patient care not paperwork. And I've seen this in action myself. Visit ariaehr.com. That's ARYAEHR.com and discover how Aria can empower you to take charge of your medical practice. You can use a special code BeyondMD to get your first month for free. Let's move on to productivity hack number 6, and that is tackling technology and optimizing our environment. Let's be honest. The biggest distraction in our lives is what's here in my hand right now. It's my cell phone. This thing is constantly going off. It may be text messages, it may be emails, it may be notifications from your favorite apps, but it's so tempting to pick up our phone every given minute and waste time. Okay, there are a few strategies to deal with this. Number 1, try putting your phone face down. I think a phone that is face down is just much less exciting to look at. Another trick you could use is maybe putting your phone into grayscale mode. And then one other strategy you can use, and one that I'm using right now when recording this episode, is to put my phone into do not disturb mode. I do this every day without fail at 9 p.m. because that's the time when I want to focus, I want to read, I want to be creative, and I do not want interruptions coming in. Okay, beyond our phone, what else can we tackle? Let's talk about TV. Now, this part is a personal decision, but if we look at the data, the average Canadian 18 years of age or older watches around 19 hours of TV a week. Guys, that is more than 2.5 hours per day. That's a lot of time that could be dedicated to something else. Now, I realize that this is something personal. I myself have made this decision. I don't enjoy watching TV unless it's the Stanley Cup playoffs or it's enjoying a quality show or movie with my wife Seema or my boys. Apart from that, I never watch TV. I never watch it by myself. But again, that's a personal decision I made. I prefer to read instead. But if you like to watch your favorite show or series on Netflix daily, that's okay if it's bringing you joy. A personal decision we have to make here. Let's move on to emails. Emails can also be a constant source of interruption. Now, I believe that with my job, I can get away with checking my email maybe once or twice a day. And I think a lot of us out there can do that. And if you can get away with it, I highly suggest you consider doing that because the truth is there's very few things that are emergencies. If there is an emergency, somebody will probably call you. Now, I realize that for some people who are running a business, maybe running their own clinic or managing a team, it is absolutely impossible to only check your email once or twice a day. But if you can get away with it, consider it and maybe allocate time for this. So for myself in the workday, I will usually give myself between 12 and 12:30 as free time, whether I'm being creative or maybe allocating some time to checking email. So important to allocate time. And then the final part about optimizing our environment in this productivity hack is if you are somebody who's doing a lot of creative work, you want to make sure that your tools are readily available. So for me, my books that I read and my journal that I take notes in, those are going to be out in the open. Maybe beside me in the living room where I'm readily going to see it, or maybe at my bedside table where I know at night I'm going to pick these tools up and use them. Make your tools readily available so that you reduce the friction. Okay, let's move on to productivity hack number 7. Take weight off your mind by creating a capture system for your ideas. The average human mind has tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of thoughts in a day. And we have a lot of ideas that surface at any given point in the day. We need to make sure that we have a capture system in place for these ideas. I have found it most useful to just scribble down all my ideas and my thoughts in a journal with pen and paper. The key thing here is you want a system that you're going to be revisiting on a regular basis. So for some people, pen and paper and a journal might work best. For other people who are going to be checking their phone more often, you may want to just use your Notes app to track your ideas. I've also started using a new app called Todoist, which is essentially to-do list without the L, Todoist. And I use this to track all my ideas for my LinkedIn posts. And then going back to email, how many times have you had a situation where you knew there was something really useful in your inbox and you had to spend time searching for that email? It took me so long to get to this, but finally I've started creating alphabetized email folders. This is something that David Allen from Getting Things Done suggests. And if you create alphabetized email folders to organize all your emails, within the key folders, you can even create some subfolders. So whenever an important email comes in, you can drag it into a folder so that you know it's going to be there, easy to access, rather than always having to search for something important. Whatever system you decide to use, I think it's important that your capture system needs to be accessed on a regular basis. So David Allen has this one amazing quote from Getting Things Done. He says that I suggest you use your mind to think about things rather than think of them. So your capture system is going to be tracking all of these things so that you can take that burden off your mind and use your mind to focus on much more important things in life. Okay, productivity hack number 8. Create an accountability partner. This one is really, really interesting. I find when I really want to get something done, I will tell people actively about it. Let me take you back to a story. June 2020, we had a lot of people over at our house as everyone was getting tired of COVID. We just had to have people over, and that was a day in June 2020 when I told everybody at the party that I was going to be starting Beyond MD. After I told everybody, I was just like, oh my God, what have I done? I literally spilled the beans. I don't have any episodes ready, but I have to follow through this now. Otherwise, I'm going to be disappointing 25 people in this room. So I find when I tell people, I unknowingly create an accountability partner in the process. This applies to each episode of my podcast as well. What I will usually do is I will schedule a guest in advance. I will book the date for the interview, and then I will do the research. Because once I have booked that individual, there is a commitment that we are going to do this, and it really forces me to follow through on the episode. Now, you may be running a clinic or running a business. Business can be a lonely journey. It may be worthwhile in this context to have an accountability partner, a buddy, somebody that you regularly update from time to time, and somebody who gives you feedback or somebody just gives you motivation to keep going in the right direction. And you can help each other out in the process. And there are also some services online where people like to log in and have an online work session alongside other people. There are websites like this called FocusMate where you can do this. Really, really, really useful for some people. So creating an accountability partner, something to think about there. Let's keep moving to productivity hack number 9. Make use of golden moments. It took me so long to realize that work is not the only thing and that our moments of rest are equally important. Early in my career, when I had weeks off, I would be picking up shift after radiology shift to supplement my income. And then I realized that when I was going back to work at the hospital, my mind wasn't recharged. And then I was truly experiencing periods where I felt a little bit burnt out. So a change that I made at the start of 2023 was I said my weeks off are going to be totally off from radiology so that I can rest my mind. But then what I realized was that in these moments of rest is when my best ideas surfaced. Think about it. It's so difficult. Like we all work hard and our jobs are often at a very frantic and feverish pace. When you're working so hard at a clinic or at a hospital, how can you have creative ideas surface? It's literally impossible. I found that to be the case for me. So I find that when I'm off and resting, that's when my best ideas come. And so I want to take advantage of these moments and I really want to capture these ideas. So a perfect example is when I'm on a plane, which is one of my favorite places to be because nobody apart from my kids can interrupt me. Like there are no emails coming in, no text messages coming in. That's where I have a lot of good ideas come and I will keep my journal handy and I will write them down. Maybe I'll write a social media post. Maybe I will brainstorm an idea for a podcast. In September of this year, we had the joy of going to Mexico City and I researched a lot of coffee shops in advance. And for people who are interested, Mexico City has some of the best coffee in the world. But anyways, I was at a cafe. It was just so magical. It was so peaceful. I was so disconnected from work, but I had a lot of ideas come. So I pulled out my journal and I just started scribbling things down. So I was taking advantage of this golden moment to capture more ideas. So I encourage everybody to think about your periods of rest like this. You may have some really, really good ideas come to mind. Okay, productivity hack number 10 is to make it fun. Guys, seriously, what is the point of doing anything if it's not fun and sustainable? Productivity expert Ali Abdaal says that the key to sustainable productivity is joy, less so discipline. And he says that we should be introducing elements into our day-to-day to make things more fun. So here are some considerations. One of the things I like to do is when I'm at work, I like to keep things light. I like to crack jokes with my colleagues. I like to do the same with our technologists because this creates a sense of morale. It helps people to bond. And I think it helps us to enjoy doing our work and it makes it all more sustainable. Another thing that I like to do from time to time, which I'm going to do this week, is I'm going to go with a colleague for coffee at our hospital Starbucks. We don't talk about work, we disconnect, and we enjoy one another's company, and it creates the bond and it makes our work more fun. I find that the toughest days for me are when I'm locked in one room for the whole day, just grinding away doing the same thing. Ali Abdaal says that in his book, Feel Good Productivity, create an adventure, change up your environment. Maybe you're going to do part of your work in a coffee shop, or maybe you'll do part of your work at the hospital, part of your work at the clinic. Changing up your environment, he says, can create a sense of adventure. It can make all the work that you do a little bit more enjoyable. And then guys, the final productivity hack, number 11, is the 2-minute rule. This is something that I came across in David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. The 2-minute rule is as follows. If you have something to do and it's on your mind, and this task will take you 2 minutes or less, do it right away, right there and then. Drop everything and get it done. There are 2 benefits to practicing life in this way. The first one is that you will be quickly trimming things off your to-do list. And the second, even more important outcome of this practice is that you will be taking the burden off your mind. It's best to not use our minds for tracking so many things. If it's something that is easily doable, like responding to an email, or if you have somebody on your mind and you've been meaning to text them right there and then. There's no better time to do it than now. Follow the 2-minute rule, trim your to-do list, and free up your mind. Guys, I really hope these productivity hacks were useful. So there were 4 books that I cited in this episode. The first one, Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. The second one, The One Thing by Gary Keller. Next was Deep Work by Cal Newport. And the final book was Getting Things Done by David Allen. I would say if you're going to read any of them, the easiest one to read is Feel Good Productivity by Ali Abdaal. The hardest one to read is probably Getting Things Done by David Allen. For me, the most impactful and perhaps one of my favorite books in the last 3 years was Deep Work by Cal Newport. I'm sure you guys have more hacks that you could share with me. If that's the case, please email me. Please text me. I would love to learn from you guys. I hope that you can use the content in this episode to be productive in your day-to-day so that we can continue to free up time to do the things that we love with the people that we love most. I hope 2025 is amazing for all of you, rich in experiences, and I hope to see you in a few weeks. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, stay well, stay savvy.